Welcome to the IT Experience Podcast. IT dashboards can look green while employees are quietly struggling. We call that the watermelon effect. This show digs into how top IT leaders turn experience into intelligence and prove real business impact. Brought to you by Happy Signals, the leading experience intelligence platform.
Hello, and welcome again to the Happy Signals IT Experience Podcast. We have a repeat guest with us today. Matt was on the show a couple of years ago, and we're speaking about all things service management. But today, I will let Matt introduce himself in just a second, but we'll be diving into a very intriguing and probably a little bit of a surprising topic. But I'll let you introduce yourself first and then dive into the topic. So go ahead, Matt. Who are you? What do you do? And welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sakari. I'm Matt Beran. I'm a product marketing specialist and overall an IT geek. Been in the space for, I want to say 25 years now, but I think it's closer to 22 years now. But over 20 years. And really, the thing that has always driven me is solving IT problems. It's where I find my passion. It's where I got my start in this industry. And it really is what keeps me going. It's what keeps me driving and being curious about this industry and how we can drive it forward, AI or not.
Perfect. And one of the things that we're both part of a group, online group, and that meets on a weekly basis called the Open Services Community. And one of the things that you mentioned in a weekly meeting was that, there's so many things that IT should learn from CX and steal their ideas, steal their principles. So that's actually going to be the topic of today, like what should IT steal from CX? So I'll just give it over to you and just let it go, and we'll keep this a candid conversation and see where it leads.
Nice. And I think the reason that this conversation is so important is because I think this is where IT can learn the most, is from this cross-pollination of industries, learning what facilities already knows, learning what HR already knows, and taking from those things to improve ourselves. And I'll start with one that's really simple because it's obvious, and it's in the customer experience space and it's in the call center space. It's really around customer obsession, building experiences and focusing on their needs. So what's troubling for me is that sometimes I see IT shops and they are customer obsessed. What do you think about this, Sakari? Do you think it's good to be customer obsessed?
Well, I think it's essential, and it probably doesn't come as a surprise because Happy Signals is all about being customer obsessed or being end user obsessed. And one of the things that I interviewed in a previous podcast episode, Nora Osman, who wrote a book called From Zero to Hero. And one of the things that she speaks about in the book is the platinum rule of treating others the way that they want to be treated, not the way that you would want to be treated. And I think that's the same customer obsession, understanding who am I actually serving? What do they need? How do they want to be met? And all of those things in a customer world, when it's an external customer, people can vote with their feet. They can vote with their wallets. They can't do that within an internal IT context. So unless you are choosing to be customer obsessed, in IT, you don't necessarily have to be, or you can be that for a longer time without being called out. In the real world, if you can call the the one where people choose their services themselves, you have to be customer obsessed to make it work. So I think, yes, I'm all in. So
okay, I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit because it's
perfect.
It's the point. It's one of those things where you steal it from the contact center world, but then you have to adapt it for IT because we in IT, a lot of the people providing service want to be customer obsessed, but the business doesn't necessarily want to pay that level of service. They don't want you to be customer obsessed. They want you to be customer unified or customer fits in this box,
Yeah.
And so I think that dichotomy is what makes IT special, in that we have to do it with constraints. We're given a budget to do it within, and we have to do it within that budget. And I think that's where the creativity of IT people needs to come into play.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. And I know that this whole standardization and sort of fit it into the box, and you need to scale it, you need to stay within a certain budget, etc. But one thing that I've found very interesting is that this is already 5-6 years ago, another guest who has been on the podcast, and of course I have a blank now. Well, anyways, it will come back to me. But somebody who's working a lot within the XLA space said that when he was starting to write his first book about XLAs, there was this zone of good enough. And I think that sometimes like being customer obsessed doesn't have to mean that you're doing somersaults in the hallway and fireworks every day, but it's just that people want to do good work. So you can be customer obsessed, you can be employee end user obsessed, but you have to understand that they're actually not coming to work to be entertained. They're coming to work to do good work. So if you can achieve that, already that level of obsession is maybe then good enough.
I love that. I love that. You're so right. Good enough. I like that. The second one that's kind of related to that is and I was at a conference and this is where it came up. Someone said this phrase and it really stood out to me because I think it's easy to forget about in IT, and it's that end-to-end experience. It's that whole experience. And I think like in IT, one of the biggest challenges is I think that is the goal of IT, to go from onboarding or the idea that someone is going to be onboarded to offboarded / compliance. And to do that well for a person, enable them throughout their career at that business until they leave, and really like leave them with that positive feeling. So they either come back or they still refer people to you, or, when they get hired back in 10 years, they're actually excited to come back instead of, kind of sad about having to go back.
Absolutely. And what do you think about then, like, in terms of the onboarding and offboarding? I'm thinking that if you onboard a company or you try to use these tools, and for example, the simple things, you don't get your laptop on day one, you don't get access to the systems until week 2, and then maybe your email starts working in whatever that delay is. And sometimes like the understanding of what the actual experience is like rather than what the planned or maybe on paper experience, etc. So that discrepancy, that gap. CX uses mystery shoppers. What do you think about mystery shopping in IT and sort of like getting to experience it from an end user point of view in a real and authentic way?
What a great idea, Sakari. If you're listening to this podcast, you should totally try that. That's brilliant. And I think as a service management consultant, when I got hired as a contractor, oftentimes that was the first question they would ask, how was contractor onboarding? And you would feel, you would have these feelings about how it went and whether it went successfully or not. And I think what I like about that is the contractor onboarding can kind of be a weather vane for how good all of onboarding is going. Because contractor onboarding is usually just like, you need an account. You don't really need hardware usually. You usually don't need like real estate space. But we need to make sure that you're productive because we're paying you X dollars per hour and it's usually not a small number. So let's make sure that we get that right. And then from there, you can dial it back and say, okay, how does it feel like as an employee being onboarded? But I love the idea of a mystery shopper. You could actually hire someone just to experience it and say, hey, this is a 1 or 2 week gig in your example. And you just have to give us feedback at the end and we'll pay you, here's the dollar amount, and have a contractor go through real employee onboarding and interview them.
That's so interesting. That could even be like, even in a recruitment cycle, if you have people that actually want to join your company, but the ones that get the rejection letter, you could say that, hey, we can't hire you this time, but would you be interested in, for example, like a 2 week or one month gig in which we can understand how we can make this process? You mentioned in the beginning that when you start thinking about onboarding, what if you would actually already think about it from the recruitment moment and on? Where does the employment actually start? Like, where does that obsession start?
Yeah, it's the same problem companies have. You guys don't always know where your customers, the happy signal customers, come from, because there's this word of mouth stuff that happens. And there's all this other stuff that happens in onboarding that you're not aware of. Maybe they apply on monster.com and Monster makes them sign up for an account. What does that feel like? Maybe they apply on LinkedIn and they have to have a LinkedIn account. How does that impact who you are getting? There's just so much to consider. It feels overwhelming. I'm getting a little sweaty.
Yeah, but I mean, now you actually this is interesting. I was expecting this to happen, that we would riff off each other and get ideas. Yeah. But now that you're saying that, they don't know where they're coming from, if they're using LinkedIn, if they came from there. But isn't that a little bit the same thing as when, for example, IT support, and you've been working in IT service management for a long time. So it's difficult to anticipate what channels customers or end users would be using to get in touch with IT. And I know that one of the things that is the most common reason why people are not happy or are very happy with certain aspects of ticket-based support is that it was clear, how do I get in touch with this company? How do I contact people? And where do I get started? So what are your thoughts on does IT have ways of copying things from CX that makes that coordination and sort of coordination maybe of how to do things in a coherent way easier? Tricky question, maybe.
It is a tricky question. It is. This is where I think we differ the most. Actually, is how the tricky situation gets addressed completely differently. Because in a call center or a customer environment, your goal is to really not let them go until it's fixed. And in IT, sometimes, you hit a threshold where you have to say look, this is bigger than me, or this is bigger than my team even. Or this is bigger than this incident, and we need to do more. A lot of times it's just stop, and now we get a bigger team together and we try again. And I think that that's where we could learn a lot. It's kind of weird to think that way, but they're the most different from us, so we're going to learn the most. And it comes down to things like they use these phrases like churn recovery or upsales. And I don't think that we always think about that in IT as what we should be doing. I'll put it to you this way. We're lucky that people report incidents, because they don't necessarily have to do that. But if we make it so that it's a positive experience and maybe they get something more out of it, then they're more willing to be a part of it. And I think that's kind of like the upsell. That's that churn recovery in IT by saying, hey, you're involved, you care about how our infrastructure works. Now let's give you more. Let's give you either more responsibility or you're closer to IT. And to me, this is kind of how we evolve to the next IT, because you see it in the AI space. All these revenue facing departments are building awesome tools with AI that IT didn't even know should exist. And now they want IT to host them, and they want us to take them over. And I think if we're not always thinking about what the next version of what an IT function looks like in a business, then I think we're doing ourselves a disservice, because the business is going to go there no matter what.
Interesting. And I love, actually, I want to, if anybody missed what you just said, that in customer service, in a call center, the goal is to not let go of the customer until basically they're delighted again, so that they would want to come back. And in IT, I feel like it's almost the opposite. So maybe that's one of those things that will be the biggest difference, is that in IT, we could, the traditional way of SLA breaches and getting rid of people as quickly as possible has been the polar opposite of the keep them until they're happy type of situation. I love that. That's a huge difference indeed.
Yeah, it's a luxury to be sure. To be sure, it's a luxury. But I do think if IT is going that direction, we need to lead the way, because otherwise we'll just be written out.
Yeah. And maybe even technology is going to actually enable it, because there's this fantastic tools now that can do the remote remediation, auto heal, etc., which means that the number of actual incidents and interruptions to that workday are going down. And maybe they should be looking at, for example, what IKEA did, is that when AI enabled doing the job of all of these different customer service people, they retrained them for higher value jobs, and they generated something like, I hope I'm not misquoting this number, but I think something like 9 billion in extra revenue with it. So maybe IT could be thinking about, okay, we're implementing these new cool tools. We're building things that we didn't even know could exist 2 years ago. We have less recurring tickets to take care of. How do we now invest the time better? And maybe they're actually, IT could today have the time to stick and hold on to the customer until they actually are delighted. And luxury, like you said, that they maybe didn't have in the past, but could have today. Any thoughts on that, Matt?
Yes, totally. And I'll give you one more. And it's something that came up at this event that I was at that was really focused. It was called Work from Home Alliance. And it is these call center leaders that are trying to figure out the best ways for their call center staff to be remote while they can still operate a call center, because that's kind of like the new challenge in their industry, because no one's building these huge call centers where people have to drive into them, and they're doing a lot of it remotely. And what your description kind of makes me think about is this one presentation that I saw. His name is Jeremy Hyde. He had a great presentation about how they're shifting a lot of their part-time or their full-time work to part-time staff, which is really fascinating in a call center environment, because you see these leaders kind of roll their eyes and think, hey, this can't possibly work as well as full-time staff. We're going to have to train them. They'll have to know what changed in the last 24 hours. There's all these challenges that come with part-time work, and they overcame them. You know, they saw those challenges, but then they designed the employment program in such a way that it was part of the work. That retraining that you would get would be part of the beginning of your shift. And so you would hear, you know, what's changed since the last time you worked. And, you know, these are the kinds of challenges that we're having today when you dial in. And I sort of think that that's kind of where IT is going, that we hoard the decisions. We hoard the ownership of technology in a business, as opposed to saying, let's share this responsibility together. And I think these alternate ways of thinking, whether it be, you know, hey, you're working part-time in the IT department to IT as part of your role, is sort of like the shift that we're going to be going into as part of this AI evolution, because you're going to have systems thinkers in HR and in finance, and IT is going to be all of our responsibility. There will always be this centralized function, you know, to manage systems. The operations part of IT doesn't really have to change all that much, but you can imagine this new reality where it's almost like people are getting an IT paycheck because they're doing so much tech work.
And it's quite interesting is if something that you mentioned there, like that part-time people that basically get re-onboarded every day. I mean, like, or since the last time you worked, maybe that's been 5 days. A lot of things can happen in 5 days, but all of those things are they possible because of like technology advancements and having both real-time data and real-time insights into things. So, for example, reporting and summarizing things and the conclusions of what the patterns are, like those don't need to be dealt with by a group of analysts for 2 weeks before being presented, then actually just available like that to anyone coming into work. Hey, these are the patterns. Just be aware of them and now get creative, maybe in some ways.
Yeah, you hit it, man. The scale of support has changed, right? The part of services that was always so challenging was that transition layer from into delivery, into business as usual. And there was so much data on that side that we could never actually see what was going on in that space. And now with the advancements in technology, I think we're primed to be the most efficient we ever could be.
Excellent. So, all right. So thinking about different learnings now, and I know that you're not just a little bit of a geek, but actually experimenting and playing with new things all the time and building things. And I mean, as soon as these AI tools came in, you built services being used by real people in real places. Let's say that you would come into IT and you would start in IT tomorrow, or you would start leading a new team of people coming into IT tomorrow. What would be like sort of rules of thumb that you would say that we're going to build up something new, and these are the principles that we should live by? I'm throwing you a really hard question, but what are some of the principles that you would say, we're going to start something new, we're going to be doing this IT service delivery with everything that it includes in this modern world. These are the rules of thumb that we will live by.
My gosh, this is a really hard question. Like I want to go back and think about this for a couple hours and then come back with a diagram and a plan. Like, this is one where you switch Claude into like the higher thinking model. And that's what I'm doing right now. Turning on the higher thinking. My boss stole this concept and he says it all the time and I love it. He says 1%. Get 1% better every day. If you try to go straight to 100% fixed, you'll never get there. Or worse, you'll create an entanglement on the way there. And I just love that concept, especially in the AI space, because you see people doing this. How many times on LinkedIn have you seen someone build an entire service management solution vibe coded? I mean, It happens every day. It happens every day now. And so that 1% is a huge bit. And I think coupled with some of the other learnings that we have in the space, specifically around co-creation of value, I think those two things in combination are the most powerful things you can learn and leverage. Because if you try to just build iteratively and you're doing it with all the stakeholders at the same time, eventually you're going to knock that door down because you're all behind it and you're learning every day. And even if you miss one day, you got 0% that day instead of 1%, then, you've got the next day and you'll get there the next day. Or, in 200 days, how far along will you be? Because hopefully if you've made 1% every day, you're past 100% by that point and just continuing to go on. So I think that's really the big thing, because especially in this weird world, this adaptive world, you almost can't have too many guidelines because then you lose some of the value of exploration.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that like now that we mentioned the 1%, I imagine myself being one of the people working with you and you come in and say, our goal is to do 1% better every day. That would also give, in a way, like a little bit of a feeling of, all right, I can learn as I go along. All I need to do is to do 1% better and it becomes achievable. It becomes something that you can do every day. And like you said, even if there is a day with 0%, but the next time I can do 1%. And the compound interest of that 1% over time is going to pay itself back in dividends in ways that are just incredible. Can't even imagine.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I'm so fortunate to get to work on such a positive team that is really trying to change the world.
Perfect. So let me one last question, since you do know about all the new developments. What's the one thing that gets you excited technology-wise, news-wise, the way we see in the market today that you discovered recently?
Okay. The big two right now that are really getting me excited is it is still around data. It's transcription into tickets. Very, very simple concept. And a lot of people have been doing it for decades. But it's much more accessible than ever before to be able to just have the actual conversation in the ticket. I think that one's super interesting. And then I'd say the second one that's really got me excited is multi-categories. We've done this thing, especially in IT, for decades, since the beginning of IT, where we say if someone calls us, we have to say what the topic was.
Yeah.
Well, usually there's like 12 or 15 topics, but you have to put that call into a nice category so it fits into this little category. This is the box that you're in. And I think we can move past that now. We're starting to move past that now, where we're starting to say, okay, is this multiple categories? Is an incident actually just this pretty little box? Or are there hairs on it? Are there scars on it? Did someone rip it open and stuff something else inside? Yes, everything we come across is a hairy monster. And so I think the thing that gets me most excited is the visibility that this technology is giving us into the complexity of our challenges, because it's always more complex than we realize.
Very interesting. So those actually quite interesting, because very practical things for the listeners of the podcast to look into, maybe like that transcription technologies and also multi-categories, and challenge them in the way that they've been thinking, like, is the way that we set up our IT today actually the best version that it could be of the setup? A little bit like become the best 1% better,
Yeah.
Just do it 1% better. The tools are out there.
Yep, exactly.
Excellent. Well, this was a really, really fun conversation, Matt. Let's wrap this up, and I'm sure that I will be having you as a guest on the show again in a not too distant future. So thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me today.
Thank you, Sakari. Have a great one.
You too. Thank you. And as we always say at the episodes, stay safe and stay happy.
If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up. That helps others, your colleagues and peers, to find the show as well.